Hello, everybody. My name is Roy Nemmer of Mundo Albiceleste.com, and welcome to another video. And this time around, we are going to talk about Giovanni Simeone. Does he deserve to be included in the Argentina team for the World Cup? Because there is certainly an argument to be made, and we are going to talk about it all right now. So let's get to it. Argentina national team coach Lionel SCALONI has submitted his preliminary list of players for the World Cup. And Giovanni Simeone is one of those names included in the list. Now, being included in the preliminary list does not necessarily mean that they will make the final squad for the World Cup. Obviously not. But if we take a look at some of the players, some of the strikers that have been included, and obviously Lautaro Martinez will be going to the World Cup. He will be the starter. There's no doubt about it. No argument to be made. Very well deserved. And so far, we've seen Scaloni go with Julian Alvarez as his substitute, as his backup. And hey, on my end, no argument to be made at all. At all. But the argument for me is, do you leave someone out like Giovanni Simeone? Do you leave him out despite the fact that he is in better form than Alvarez and in better form than even Joaquin Correa? Because he is. And he has been in great form for Napoli despite not being a starter. Now, the thing with Simeone is, as I mentioned, he's not a starter. But neither is Alvarez at Manchester City, and neither is Joaquin Correa at Inter. And if we take a look at numbers, just statistics, okay, forget about talent. I'm not saying one is more talented than the other. But if we take a look at statistics, you will see, and we will see, that Simeone is doing more with his minutes than Alvarez and then Correa, than Joaquin Correa. So let's take a look at it. If we take a look at Giovanni Simeone, for example, and these numbers and these, this graph, this is from Transfer Market, so credit to them. But if we take a look at Giovanni Simeone in the Champions League, he has played 4 games and scored 4 goals and was in the starting 11 40% of the time. So that's not a lot. Started 40% of the games in the Champions League, 4 out of 4 in terms of goals. Now, if we take a look at Serie A, 6 games, 2 goals, and he has not started a single match for Napoli in the league. All right, so 4 out of 4 in the Champions League, 2 out of 6 in Serie A. If we take a look at Julian Alvarez in the Champions League, he has played 5 games and scored 1 goal. So he's played 1 more game than Simeone and scored 3 goals less. And he's been in the starting 11 60% of the time, as opposed to Simeone's 40% of the time. So in the Champions League, Simeone has been more efficient or more informed, let's say, than Alvarez. In the Premier League, 9 games for Alvarez, 2 goals, and he's been in the starting 11 9% of the time. Right? Now, I don't want anyone to think that, I'm saying, oh, well, Simeone is a better player than Alvarez. And no. Number one, they're not the same age. One is, Alvarez is still in his first season in Europe. So there's a lot there. My whole point, or my whole argument, is there is an argument to be made for Simeone's inclusion. And we're going to talk about that again and some more. And not just statistically speaking, but we're going to get to that. We're going to get to some more stuff. So in terms of statistics or form, Simeone's in better form than Alvarez. If we take a look at Joaquin Correa, 0 goals in the Champions League in 4 games, but he has 2 assists, and he started 40% of the games. In the league, he's played 10 games, has 2 goals, 1 assist, and started 27% of the games, right? So 2 goals, 1 assist in 10, whereas Simeone has 2 goals in 6. Now, what's clear about all 3 of these players is that neither of them are necessarily starters for their clubs. All 3 are substitutes. And while Alvarez, and rightfully so, will be at the World Cup, and in my opinion, rightfully so, should be Lautaro's backup, it doesn't mean that Simeone should be left out, especially if you look at form, because form, in my opinion, counts a lot, especially for a tournament, and especially for a 7-game tournament at a World Cup. If you want to win it, you have to win all 7 games. And you need players that are in form. And especially in the striker department, it's hurt Argentina in the past. Because if we go back, let's say, to 2014, fantastic 4. Messi, Agüero, Di Maria, Higuain, and you had Lavezzi as a substitute. What happened by the time we got to the final? Di Maria was injured, was unable to play. Aguero was clearly injured and unfit. Messi had played the tournament of his life and was absolutely tired by the end of it. Higuain did not have the best of finals, and that left Lavezzi, who in my opinion was Argentina's best player in that final, or at least in the first half that he had played. And the other thing as well is, in this whole tournament, and you need form and everything, what happens, and God forbid, but what happens if something happens to Lautaro and Lautaro cannot play? Lautaro's injured, or Lautaro's suspended, or somehow, some way, both, whatever it is, he can't play. Alvarez is his substitute. In my opinion, nothing wrong with that. A great substitute to have, a great, great backup. But Alvarez is not going to play 90 minutes in every single game at the World Cup. He's going to have to be substituted at one point. Who do you bring in? Do you bring in Joaquin Correa, who has done well with Argentina, but has not been very sharp in front of goal? He's helped create chances, he's tracked back, but ultimately when it comes to scoring goals for Argentina, he's lacked that composure and that sharpness. So do you go with a Joaquin Correa, or do you go with a Giovanni Simeone, who right now at least is in great form? Now, I'm not saying Simeone is the be-all and end-all and he's going to fix Argentina's problems. That's not what I'm saying. Because Simeone, just like any other player, has his faults, right? No one's perfect, no player is perfect. And if you look at Simeone, he does go through rough patches. And we've spoken about this in the past. I've spoken about this in the past. He'll score 3 goals in one game. The next game, he's going to score 4 goals. And then he won't score again for another month or 2. And then he's going to score another 3 goals. So he does have that in him. And right now, he's going through that great form. And he is, like I said, in better form than Alvarez and Correa. Now, they're different kinds of players. In my opinion, Simeone, more of a number 9, a pure number 9. Can't really play him on the wing. Alvarez can play on the wing. Joaquin Correa isn't really a number 9 either, more of a center forward. So you can ultimately somehow end up playing Alvarez, Di Maria, and Simeone, or Messi, Alvarez, Simeone, or something, right? Let's not forget Di Maria. I love Di Maria. We all love Di Maria. But we've seen, unfortunately, his track record when it comes to fitness. Not always the best. So if Di Maria is not, fit enough to go, and you need that attacking talent, right? You have Nicolas Gonzalez, sure. You have Papu Gomez, who can play on the wing. You have Angel Correa, who can play on the wing. But you also have Alvarez. So you could ultimately end up having Alvarez on one side and Simeone as your striker. And then have, let's say, you could have Messi on the right-hand side, depending on how or where Scaloni wants to play Messi. We should not completely disregard Simeone from the World Cup. We need the goals. We need the goals. And if we take a look at the national team goals, those 3 players, let's begin with Simeone. Simeone was part of the very, very first starting 11 that Scaloni put out. It was against Guatemala in 2018, and Simeone actually scored in that game. So Simeone has scored for the national team. Now, the only thing is that this was about 4 years ago, right? He played in the first 4 games under Scaloni. His last game was against Mexico in 2018, so 4 years ago, well, just over 4 years ago. And he was on the bench against Ecuador in 2020 in a World Cup qualifier. And this, we're going to get to that in just a second in terms of chemistry, right? Lack of chemistry with the team. And I'm going to get to that. But that is Simeone's number with the national team, or those are his numbers. 1 goal in 4 years, and he hasn't played in 4 years for Argentina. If we take a look at Alvarez, again, I'm not even going to make an argument for Alvarez. There's no need. He's the backup. But he has 2 goals in 11 games, right? Simeone has 1 goal in 5. Alvarez has 2 goals in 11. He scored against Ecuador and Jamaica recently. So his introduction to the national team has been pretty solid. I am very, very happy with Alvarez. When we get to Correa, Joaquin Correa has 3 goals in 18 games. First goal against Singapore. The second one was the game winner against Bolivia at altitude. And the third one was against Venezuela. The argument, in my opinion, that can be made against Correa is the fact that he has been, like I said, he struggled in front of goal, but at the same time, Scaloni doesn't appear to fully trust him. And I say that because if we look at the games recently, it's not often, or it's not every single time, that Correa actually makes the bench for Argentina. There's been a couple of times where Correa does not even make the bench, let alone the starting 11. So he gets selected for the team, doesn't make the starting 11, misses out on the bench. And yet at the same time, Scaloni does sometimes give a minute. So this is why I say I don't think Scaloni fully trusts Correa, but I think at the same time, he had no other choice in a way, because Simeone was not firing on all cylinders like he is right now. And like I said, form is important. And Simeone recently scored 2 goals in the Champions League for Napoli against Rangers. And after the game, he was asked what his goal is. If his goal, if his objective for these 2 goals was to make the national team for the World Cup. And Simeone said, and I quote, "Not just for these 2 goals. My personal objective is to be able to show the coach of the Argentina national team that I want to be there with the group to help them and do my part." So he knows that he's fighting for a World Cup spot. He knows it. And honestly, I hope he is. He's in the preliminary list, and I hope Scaloni has not fully made up his mind. And, we talked about form, and I'm going to conclude about form in just a second. But if we talk about form, all 3 are substitutes. As I mentioned, Alvarez is getting 15 to 20 minutes a game. He's playing with City, training with the best players in the world. So don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to make a case for Simeone to start ahead of Alvarez. That's not my point. There is a reason, in my opinion, or there's an argument, in my opinion, as to why Simeone should be part of the team. Because all 3 are getting limited minutes. They're not starters, and he's doing the most of it. Now, in terms of chemistry, well, you might say, well, if you call up Simeone now, he hasn't been with the team in 4 years. What about chemistry? How is he going to mesh well with the team? How is he going to gel with the team? That's a valid argument. But I'm going to give you 2 names, Enzo Fernandez and Thiago Almada. Both of them made their debuts for the national team last month in September, and both played great. Almada showed amazing chemistry with Lionel Messi, of all players, and Enzo Fernandez is Enzo Fernandez. He was great. He was great. So in terms of chemistry, I mentioned this when I spoke about Thiago Almada. I said talent is talent no matter what. I think Simeone is a talented player. I think with a week or whatever amount of training time that the national teams will have together prior to the World Cup, I think he'll do well. I'm not saying to pick Simeone and have him in the starting 11, or even have him be Lautaro's substitute. I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying things happen. Injuries happen. Suspensions happen. A bunch of things can happen. You might get a Lautaro that's injured, and somehow, some way, Alvarez gets red carded. What do? Who's the backup? You're going to go into a knockout stage game with, and I'm trying to say this without sounding disrespectful, but you're going to go into a knockout stage game with Joaquin Correa, who's not even, an out-and-out striker, just more of a center forward. You're going to have him as your number 9? Or would you go with someone like Simeone? Let me know what you guys think. I know we've kind of spoken about this in the past, and when we do the live discussions, people tend to ask, what about Simeone and what about this player? But there's been a lot of discussion on Mundo Albiceleste. There's been a lot of discussion on social media. And I don't think I'm the only one that maybe thinks Simeone deserves a chance with the national team. Let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment. I love reading them. Like I said, I know I always mention I do, but with the World Cup coming around, we're going to have a lot of content, a lot of stuff coming up. And if you guys could convince me as to why Simeone should not get included, by all means, go for it, right? And there's someone else. There's still Angel Correa, who's still fighting for a spot too. And he's, in my opinion, should be there even ahead of Simeone, and in my opinion, even ahead of Joaquin Correa. I love Angel Correa, but that's a whole other story for a whole other video. But if you like what you saw, hit that like button. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and hit that notifications button to be the first person notified as soon as a new video drops. Once more, my name is Roy Nemmer of MundoAlbiceleste.com, and thank you for watching.